we thought we should look to the future. And finding that Afghanistan does not have a single scientific botanical garden, we felt that we should use this community, which no one else has, to engage them in creating a network of botanical gardens across Afghanistan. Why are we here tonight? Because as Ambassador Mohabbat said, by the way, Mohabbat means kindness in Dari, and Ambassador Mohabbat really lives up to his name. We have seen a very different kind of Afghanistan in Hiroshima, thanks to the vision of Hiroshima Prefecture. And I'd like to tell you two stories before I can talk about this new initiative of Botanical Gardens. The first story is this story. It's called the UNITAR Hiroshima Fellowship for Afghanistan. It's one of the most low-key, but excuse my bias, it's probably one of the most effective human resource development programs ever conducted by an international body. And I don't say that because I was involved. I was only involved in the first 5-6 years. I say that because Hiroshima is a unique place to do post-conflict training, as Nagasaki would be. I say that because the prefecture of Hiroshima did not impose a timeline. As you know, international development projects are really weak because you have to spend a lot of money very quickly. And in many cases, like in Afghanistan, you cannot spend a lot of money very quickly. So the wisdom of the Hiroshima Prefecture was in that they gave us, my institute, UNITAR, they gave us small amounts of money over a long period of time. And they did not dictate to us how we should spend it. And so therefore, this Afghan fellowship program, unheard of in the UN system, went on for 15 years. I can spend the whole evening telling you about this Afghan fellowship program. What I think we did, which was unique, we built into it a system where fellows or trainees did not remain trainees all the time. They became coaches of other Afghans, then they became mentors of other groups, then they actually ran the workshop for us. At the end of the program, there were more Afghans running the program than there were foreigners. These are different years, and of course I have to say, Hiroshima for this kind of training is a very unique environment because you're constantly reminded what it takes to rebuild. And the one thing all the Afghans tell me when they visit the Peace Museum is Hiroshima was worse than Afghanistan. So this was the reference. Just a few facts and numbers. Roughly over these 15 years, this program trained about 540 people. Roughly about 100 people from Singapore, United States, Canada, Italy, France, they came and joined as experts and resource persons because they really believed in this program. We ran about 44 workshops, and we, I think, could reach out, and Ambassador Mohabbat will correct me if I'm wrong, to roughly a very broad spectrum of civil, governmental, private sector, academic people. And we introduced something that I think for these young Afghans was very important. It was their fellowship, they could run it. There was upward mobility and meritocracy. If they were good, they could go very far. This net network, this program ended last year, in 2019. And a group of us who were involved in this activity felt we could not let this program and this large community disperse without doing something together. We have two projects. The first one is to do a book, which is an obvious kind of project you would do at the end of such a long training. The second one, we thought we should look to the future, and finding that Afghanistan does not have a single scientific botanical garden, we felt that we should use this community, which no one else has, to engage them in creating a network of botanical gardens across Afghanistan. And this is what we did. We started consulting last year, asking people, can we do this? Should we do this? And everybody said, how can Afghanistan not have a single botanical garden? And there started the genesis of this activity. I have to tell you the second story before we move on to the botanical garden, and that's directly related to Hiroshima. I think I don't need to talk about Hiroshima and Nagasaki here. You will know both cities were destroyed on 6 and 9 August 1945 by two different kinds of atomic bombs, right in the center of the city, not on any military target. This was what Hiroshima, central Hiroshima looked like. Miraculously, you can see on the bottom right, the state of the trees in the hypocenter. Miraculously, within the 2-kilometer distance from the hypocenter, at the time about 170 trees survived the atomic bombing. There are different species of trees. We have, of course, the majestic ginkgo, we have pine, kurugane, holly tree, we have counter tree. But why did we know that they were atomic bomb trees? Because it was very difficult to figure out what is atomic and what is not, what is survivors. Testimonies, photos, archives, the genius of the Japanese, record keeping. The records were there and people came and said, I remember this tree was in my school or in my temple or in my house. And therefore, Hiroshima City gradually, with the efforts, especially of citizens, and from 1996, with the effort of the municipality, Hiroshima started archiving and registering these 170 survivor trees. Now, Nagasaki also has survivor trees, but the topography is different. Nagasaki is hilly, the bomb was to the side. Hiroshima is a delta, that was why it was chosen as a target. The bomb went in rays, so it was possible to calculate what was where. And also the effort of the people, they quickly started coming together and putting their trees together. Nagasaki is trying to do that now, but it's more difficult and much more costly. This lady is Numata-san. She started a campaign, the Arugiri campaign, and that's from that moment, little by little, people started saying, these trees are really very, very important. But Hiroshima City was sort of giving plants or these symbolic trees to VIPs without necessarily keeping control of who has what. And that's when we started the Green Legacy Hiroshima campaign. We wanted to do it much later, but the Fukushima nuclear accident happened in 2011, in March, and in July we launched the Green Legacy Hiroshima campaign. It's a multi-partner campaign. In addition to UNITAR and Hiroshima Botanical Garden, Hiroshima City, Hiroshima Prefecture, Hiroshima University. So you can see already the kind of stakeholders coming together to work on a green campaign. And of course, we decided that we will send the trees or the seeds, but we will ask people to take responsibility. The campaign has grown. We now have in 36 countries. I always say if I was as successful as we have been with Green Legacy in the United Nations, I would be Secretary General now, and I would be really trying to change the world. But it's a beautiful campaign. From the beginning, we decided it would be voluntary, no money involved, because how can you make money of trees that survived the atomic bombing? So we had to run it in some way that was manageable, but that remained pro bono. That was really very important. So that's a model I would like to experiment with for also the Afghan Botanical Gardens. And now the trees are very famous in Hiroshima. The mayor goes everywhere and takes sampling. We work with about 20% of our partners are botanical gardens. They have to commit, they have to sign an application form, they have to commit to the long-term viability of the trees that they receive. Okay. And I'll just give you one quick example, which is the Icho, which is in the famous Shizenkan Garden, which was created by Ueda Soko, who is one of the soldier scholars of Japan. And this is how the garden looked after the atomic bombing. In fact, many people went there because they were looking for water. So this was the state of the garden, and this is actually the ginkgo tree, the majestic ginkgo tree, probably the oldest ginkgo tree in Hiroshima. This one ginkgo tree gives about 2,000 to 3,000 seeds every year. I usually have one in my pocket. I'm going to see if I have. No, I don't have. But anyway, I have a few seeds of this ginkgo tree if you want to take some from this evening. But it's a very generous tree. It's, you know, the ginkgo is one of the oldest trees that survives fire. That's why this one also survived very well. And of course, the interesting thing is all the things you can do. So children go there, visitors go there. We have seed planting, we have collecting, we have just one tree and one idea. And this ability to rally, ambassadors go, you know, activists go. It doesn't matter. The idea is everyone is interested to take part in something related to this tree. And you can see, actually this is our master gardener, Horiguchi Sensei, and he has been taking care of these trees for the last 35 years on his own, practically. And we went there, just him and I, in September after a typhoon. In 1 hour, we collected about 1,000 seeds. Yeah, so they had fallen, it was easy to do so. And we went back with the group in November. Again, in 1 hour, we collected about 1,500 seeds. Okay, so that was really just to show how generous even an atomic bomb tree can be. So this was the model we had in mind. I have some of these other trees that are dispersed in different parts. They're like a leitmotif in Hiroshima. You can really go and follow these trees to get to know Hiroshima that you wouldn't know. Okay, so, and these are our partners, Rwanda, Russia. Everybody rallies for an idea like this. So let me go, Ambassador, now to the Botanical Gardens. And Ambassador Mohabbat made my life very easy because he gave you a little bit of the background, the topography, and the ecosystem. So let me just talk about what it will take to get some botanical gardens started. These are the first ginkgo saplings we sent to Kabul. Actually, 2013, Afghanistan was one of my priorities when we started Green Legacy Hiroshima campaign. No botanical gardens, so very difficult to manage and make these trees grow. We had failure after failure, but I think now some of the saplings are really growing. And over the years, talking with all the people who were taking care of the Green Legacy Hiroshima saplings, we decided to look into what we can do to make it more sustainable. And botanical gardens is what we thought about. So in the time left for me, I'm going to go over some myths, because when we say botanical gardens, we always think it's very expensive. So how many of you have been to a botanical garden in the last month? Last 3 months? Oh, thank you. Last year? The point is that we take for granted that if the apples are suffering from a virus, that we can have other apples quickly found. We take for granted that if all the beautiful trees at the Kokusai Kaikan in our house, if they start dying, we take for granted that we should know what to do with it. A lot of research and understanding of plant life happens in botanical gardens. And typically we don't know that anymore, because our image is botanical gardens where very elegant ladies go and look at orchids. But the model of botanical gardens is over. Botanical gardens now are looking more and more into indigenous plants, adapting to climate change, looking into food security, restoring the ecology of the area, medicinal. That was why botanical gardens were created in the first place, medicinal. So historically, botanical gardens were not created as moments of luxury, but in very difficult times. For example, during the plague in Europe, that's how botanical gardens started, because the monks wanted to experiment with different plants. Or the Great Depression, the beautiful Montreal Botanical Garden in Canada was created to create jobs. So botanical gardens had always that function. And of course the ancient botanical gardens of Europe, the 3 oldest botanical gardens, scientific botanical gardens, are in Italy. Should not be surprising. They're in Perugia, Pisa, and in Florence. So they were actually not so old. 16th century is when you started seeing all these botanical gardens coming up. The other myth is, with very little care, botanical gardens don't die. For example, the Warsaw Botanical Garden was completely bombed out, and they built it exactly the same, with the same plants in the same location. The reason for that is that people remember, I remember there was this willow tree, I remember the apples here. There is a memory that stays. So, in fact, botanical gardens are pretty easy to maintain. Whether, I hope it would be the case, Ambassador, but even the Taliban would want a botanical garden. And in fact, ironically, in 2017, even the Taliban encouraged planting of trees. So botanical gardens, usually under the radar, can go through the tumults of many wars and revolutions. Botanical gardens are a combination of library, museum, research center, plant hub, and a park. So in other words, they have so many different functions that just go unappreciated. It's a little bit like trees. We take them so much for granted. But as the title of our seminar says, if the plant life was to disappear tomorrow, we would disappear the day after tomorrow. So let's not take them for granted. Okay, and we're talking about Afghanistan. I know in your mind you think we have seen it was arid, it's difficult, it's conflict zones, but not one single model fits all. There are all sorts of small ways that you can create knowledge about plant life. And I think the most important point for me, I'd like to emphasize, botanical gardens don't cost that much. I mean, we'll hear from Naito Sensei about the cost of a very beautiful botanical garden. But the basics are pretty simple. If you have the land, basically you're looking at half the staff being scientists and management, and half being gardeners and horticulturists. So about 60 to 70% of the maintenance operating costs of a botanical garden are personnel. And personnel in Afghanistan could be very, very affordable. So these are not huge costs that we are talking about. We have been consulting, and these are my last two slides, we have been consulting with a number of botanical gardens in the United States. For the Americans amongst us, maybe since the election of a certain president, you always feel bad about America. But I have to say that Americans are the most generous scientists. Over the last 6 months, I have received so much information, support, commitment, for, just for the joy of sharing and giving. So we have been in touch with the main body that oversees botanical gardens. It's called Botanical Garden Conservation International. It's based in the UK. It has chapters everywhere. The problem with these networks is botanical gardens in rich countries exchange a lot, but they exchange with other rich countries. So Japan has a fantastic network of exchange for its botanical gardens. But Afghanistan, Rwanda, Chad, no interest because there is no mechanism. And we would like to look how to establish those mechanisms. And these people are helping us to do so. And finally, there is a lot of information, Ambassador, how to actually go about creating botanical gardens, and a variety of different scenarios, different landscapes, different topographies, different resources. The information is there, the knowledge is there. Now the question is, can we get botanical gardens into Afghanistan? And I hope afterwards to the 40 countries that don't even have a single botanical garden. When I asked our friends at the Conservation International, how many countries don't have a botanical garden? They said, oh, we don't even know. We only keep track of those that do. So in other words, only the privileged can continue. And I think it's time to break that cycle. And this is the image of Afghanistan I remember. I went to Afghanistan when I was 10 years old. And we passed through Khaybar Pass. And Khaybar Pass is known as a very violent place now, but actually it was, I remember people with machine guns, but it was very friendly. Children could go around playing. And I remember Kabul with great poplar trees and very blue sky, beautiful mountains. All that has disappeared, but this is the genius of nature. It doesn't mean it cannot come back. And we'd like to leave a legacy that will allow it to come back. Now, I look forward to hearing from Naito Sensei the do's and don'ts and answering your questions, but I hope that by the time you leave tonight, not only you will be a little fatter eating the beautiful nuts of Afghanistan, but really driven to go and see where you can create botanical gardens. Thank you.